Hello everyone and welcome to another CAD video. In this video we're going to talk about two new tools. One for the creation of planes to start our sketches on, because what we've seen before is that we can draw sketches on kind of the default origin planes, right? The XY, the XZ, and the YZ, as well as on faces of our pre-existing shapes. But the reality is that sometimes we want to draw a sketch that's not tied to one of those things, but some other portion. So for example, we might want to create, in particular, a new plane that is at the same, parallel to another one, but offset by some distance, or perhaps creating a plane that is tangent to a curved surface. Those are pretty common things, and this construction menu will give us a bunch of different options, and there's in fact a bunch of different types of planes we can create, but we'll stick today to the offset plane along with the Loft tool. The Loft tool basically allows us to create shapes, 3D shapes, by stretching essentially from one flat, either face of one existing object or from a sketch to another flat sketch. If they're in parallel with one another and distant and offset by some distance between each other, it'll automatically kind of create the shape and transition smoothly between the two shapes, as we saw in that picture. So we're going to do that now. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and create a simple sketch. I'll stick to the bottom XY plane, so I'm looking top down. I'll simply make a rectangle, and I'll choose a center rectangle to keep it centered. So I'll choose a rectangle, center rectangle, choose the middle. I'll do a 100 by 100 millimeter rectangle, and there it is. And that's pretty much all I really need for my sketch. It's completely constrained. You can see all the lines are black. I'm going to finish. And now here's where it is. If I were to kind of make the planes, the origin planes, visible, we can see that I used this XY plane to start, and if I want to create a new sketch, if I put on the same surface, they're going to be on top of each other, and that's not really helpful. We can see we have one sketch. I want to kind of put some gap between them, and so using this same sketch is not really, plane is not really helpful. So I want to say, look, can I make a new drawing area? Since there is no 3D object, can I make a plane available somewhere higher up? Maybe at the same level, parallel, but just at a higher level. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this construct menu, and what's an offset plane. You can see in the picture that basically an offset plane is you choose some planar surface, some flat surface, and then you can say, look, by some distance move away from it, and that's a new sketching kind of area. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to choose offset plane, and again I can choose, and now anything that's basically a 2D shape, so I can choose a sketch, I can choose the actual origin, which is the XY here, or I can choose other ones, and since I have my sketch, I'll simply use this sketch as my starting point, and you can see it makes the yellow square, and it gives me an arrow, so how far offset do I want this to be? And so since we're going to be lofting, the distance I'm going to choose is how far the top and bottom of my 3D shape are going to be. So I'm going to say about 30 millimeters. And there it is, and you can see again this yellow square is not actually a sketch, it's simply just an area that we can draw on. And notice it's not in the origin section, but there's a new section called construction, and there it is, plane 1. And so now I have my sketch in the original, which is tied to the original origin plane XY, and I have a new plane called plane 1 that I can draw on. So I'll go ahead and do that. So I'll select it, I'll do a new sketch. And you can see it looks like it's still there. You can see the other sketch underneath, but if I'm actually looking at what's happening, you can see that the drawing grid is actually hovering above, and in fact 30 millimeters above the other sketch. So let me go ahead and do my top view again. I can hide the first sketch just so I don't see that in my way. I'm going to use the circle tool to draw a circle, and I'll do this one at let's do 75 millimeters in diameter, and there it is. I'm going to click Finish Sketch. And so now if I make them both visible, you can see that there are two sketches that are parallel but offset from one another by 30 millimeters. And so now the final step is to create a loft between these two. And again, the idea of a loft is the default behavior is to simply create a smooth 3D object that transitions seamlessly as best it can from one shape to another. And now what I will say is that you have to be careful sometimes, because we're going from a shape that has sharp four corners and four edges to a round shape, and it's going to do its best to make this happen. But if you kind of overdo it sometimes, depending on how exotic your shapes are, it can cause kind of weird warpage in your objects. And if worst case scenario, it might not actually be able to generate the shape, but in this one it will be able to do that successfully. So I'm going to go to the Create menu, our Loft tool. Our Loft menu comes up, and essentially we have to choose, well, what are the profiles we're going to loft between? And so it already is selected for me, so I'm going to choose one and then another. And you can see that it kind of gives me the preview of this, and it says, look what's happening. And if I click OK, then we end up with the result. You can see that it kind of starts off with like the flat shape, and it goes up and it curves. And again, notice how it has to kind of conform and round, because the end goal is that there's a fully round surface here. And so the idea is it has to warp to get to that thing, right? And so now here I have my shape. And again, from this now, this is a complete body, so I can do all kinds of things. So for example, if I wanted to extrude downward and cut into this, I could make a hole. If I wanted to cut to the sides, and so on. The only real challenge, for example, is that since these are curved surfaces, I could not really create a new sketch on these. I can choose the top face because it's flat. I could choose the bottom face because it's flat. But these surfaces are not really flat, so these are not drawable surfaces. So we have to be very, very careful. That depending on what kind of shapes we create with our loft, that this is not going to work out so great. So I won't do that right now. Actually, what I want to do is create another offset plane and then do this one more time just to show us. It doesn't have to be from sketch to sketch, but it can be from the surface of one object to a sketch or to something else. So I'm going to make one more sketch. First, I'll construct an offset plane from the top, and I'll go another 30 millimeters. And there it is. And so that's my second plane. And notice the first plane is not gone. It's just invisible because once you use it for part of your kind of construction of something, it tends to hide them just like it does with sketches. So I'm going to choose my new higher plane. I'm going to create another sketch. This time I'm going to use something. I'm going to use a polygon, and I'll do a inscribed polygon, so it's within a circle. I'll keep it centered. I'll make this a little bit bigger. I'll do 50 in total. And right now I have a 6-sided polygon, and I'll go ahead and leave it at 6 sides and hit enter. And there it is. If I click Finish Sketch, we can see that that's my polygon. And then now I'm going to do the same thing one more time. I'm going to Loft. Oops, I did that one. I'm going to do Loft from. I did it again. And again, notice now I can choose for my profiles that bottom profile one, and then I can choose this one as the second one. And there it is, the exact same thing happening. And again, it's a little more subtle because there's more sides, so it's almost like a circle going to a circle, but obviously there's only 6 sides here. So there is some curvature as we go through here, right? So there it is. The Loft tool is really great, convenient. Again, I'd say it's not necessarily always common to do from sharp edge to rounded edges, but if you need that or if you want to, that's a pretty convenient thing to do. We can do a lot of interesting stuff with this as we go along. And so I'll just kind of show one thing, another tool that's useful. We've been using extrusions, but for example, if I wanted to make this thing hollow and give the walls a certain thickness, with drawing a sketch, it would be really difficult to do, particularly because of the transformations of here. So we're going to try using this other tool called shell, which if you look at the drawing, what it should do is take whatever shape it is and hollow it out. And then the shell is how thick do we want the walls to be. So I'm going to select shell. It asks me what body do I want to make into a shell. I'm going to choose this entire thing. This is all one body. You can see it's all one body. And then now how thick do I want these walls? I'm going to go and put 2 millimeters. And there it is. And you can see, in fact, it's hard to tell, but the inside is also hollow. You can see through those walls. And so now, even though these walls are curved, right? And again, what I'll say is that at this pinch, at this point where the round part is, it's not going to be 2 millimeters. It's going to be kind of flat. But on the inside walls are 2 millimeters. So there it is. So I very quickly hollowed out this entire thing, which is really convenient. I don't have to do a lot of work to scoop it out. I don't have to do any extra math. What I could have done is made the same exact shapes, smaller measurements, and then cut one from the other. But that's essentially what shell does for us in a much quicker fashion. So shell is a great tool to go along with some of these things quickly. So there's our Loft tool, our construct offset plane. These are wonderful tools. They give us kind of more ability to draw shapes and sketches in places that we normally wouldn't be able to do. And then finally we saw our shell, which is a great way to hollow out objects quickly and efficiently, no matter how complex they might be. I'll see you in another video.